Addressing all Spawn fans in the room, it's bound to hit you hard when we tell you that Spawn's most horrible adversary hasn't always been a clown. The demonic villain in focus today not only happens to be the first of her kind, but she also happens to be the relentless, conniving, treacherous, and vicious long-lost sibling of the very monstrous demon, the Violator. Believe us when we tell you that the Viscerator is far worse than any of her siblings, and in today's video, we'll be exploring the origins of this long-lost Fleabiac sister here. But before we get into our explanation, we do have one very small request. If you enjoy our content, then please support us by subscribing to our channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means an awful lot. So, are you ready for some action? We know we are. Without any further ado, let's jump on in. For a better understanding of the character, we will be exploring issues 24 and 25 of the comic series, The Scorched. Mind you, the comics have a lot happening and our focus will strictly be on the storyline of the Viscerator. The Scorched, issue 24, with a plot by John Layman, additional script by Todd McFarlane, and art by Steven Segovia. The issue begins with a prologue that shows an old abandoned church in ruins, nestled on the outskirts of York in a fog-laden terrain. Clearly, by the looks of it, the church is very unlikely to be mentioned in any history book, and even the most learned scholar wouldn't know a thing about it. A closer peek at it, and it will almost feel as if all knowledge of it was intentionally wiped out centuries ago. Evidently, the church hasn't had any visitors in years, and even the locals know to avoid this place. But of course, all of that changes tonight. A loud noise is heard, and we see some heavily armed men using all their strength to dig deeper beneath the collapsed cathedral. The readers are also introduced to a certain man named Bishop, and the other men seem to be working for him. After more digging, a passageway is discovered, and the men tell Bishop it is placed right where he had said it would be. Bishop has a wicked glint in his eyes and says, of course it is. As they all venture deeper inside the passageway, the men working for Bishop become all the more inquisitive, asking Bishop all kinds of questions. When asked how old the place is, Bishop tells them that the church was constructed in the 3rd and 4th decades of the 16th century and that it was built for a rather specific purpose. While gazing at the ancient carvings on the catacombs, the men tell the Bishop that they have never seen a church like this before. This is when the Bishop tells them that was precisely the whole intention. This place was never meant to look like a church, and while it is a place of worship, it isn't a holy place at the end of the day. Of course, this has the men startled, and they further ask Bishop if it's dangerous for them to be there. And that's when Bishop, who is seen sweating profusely by then, tells them that it is absolutely not safe. With all of them reaching the innermost chamber, a sound is heard. The sound of a blade slicing through the dark, whisper quiet, and glass smooth. The following second, Bishop finds himself all alone, and as he looks down, he can see the bloodied, decapitated heads of his men lying all around him. Bishop doesn't waste any time. He addresses the Dark Force as the Daughter of Darkness and Mistress of Deceit, further adding that he has come to free her. In the dark, at a distance, we see some fiery red eyes, and a voice is heard that asks Bishop if he thinks he can free her. Bishop affirms, and tells her that he knows who it is that she genuinely despises, or, in other words, the one responsible for putting her there in the first place. He also adds that he is alive, and that if she lets him release her, she can take her revenge. Who, or should we say what, appears in the next comic panel is, would it be fitting to say, capable of emptying your bowels? Yes, we are finally introduced to the Viscerator, who literally has 9 fiery eyes. She's dreadful to even look at, so no one can imagine the terror she's bound to inflict when she states to the Bishop that she has been imprisoned in the shadowy caves beneath the collapsed cathedral and left for dead centuries ago. And all this while, she has simply been waiting for her shot at revenge. The prologue ends with the Viscerator asking the Bishop to release her so that she can finally turn her dreams of vengeance into reality. Next, we find Jessica Priest, aka She-Spawn, riding her motorcycle and stopping at a biker bar named the Devil's Pitchfork. There, she is seen meeting Medieval Spawn and the Redeemer, both members of her team, the Scorched, in their civilian garb. Jessica explains to the duo her plan to reassume leadership and makes it very clear that she only wants Medieval Spawn and Redeemer as the core members. With Jessica asking them for their commitment after a brawl with a bunch of bullies inside the biker bar, the Viscerator makes quite the grand entry, all set to settle the score with Medieval Spawn. With the Viscerator particularly addressing John of York and saying that they have some unfinished business to take care of, She-Spawn asks Medieval Spawn if the Viscerator happens to be his friend. Medieval Spawn introduces the Viscerator to She-Spawn as one of his worst enemies back from his timeline. Well, of course, Medieval Spawn is quite surprised to find the Viscerator still alive because he thought he had killed her all this time. Seeing the Viscerator breathing in front of him again, Medieval Spawn promises that he will not make the same mistake of leaving her alive again. The issue ends with the Viscerator telling him that the idea of killing him has kept her alive all these centuries, and that she has no intentions of making anyone forget the Fleabiac family name, even if it meant her being the last one standing. The Scorched, issue 25. We begin with a flashback that takes us back 500 years. We as the readers find ourselves in the pits of hell, where Malebolgia is seen engaged in a rather intense conversation with the Violator. We learn that Malebolgia has assigned the Violator to challenge John of York and find out if he was worthy enough to be a general for Malebolgia's army. Things didn't go as planned, and the Violator was brutally defeated and sent crawling back to Malebolgia by medieval spawn. Of course, Malebolgia is highly infuriated, given that the Violator has failed him and proved himself incapable of holding his own in the earthly battle against medieval spawn. The Violator attempts to defend himself and states to Malebolgia that medieval spawn has taken him by surprise and that he also has a dragon at his disposal. But this only makes Malebolgia even more furious, and he ends up transforming his offender into the clown for making a complete fool of himself. Mind you, while all this is happening, a voice from behind Malebolgia is constantly seen encouraging the punishment. Of course, we aren't introduced to the character right away, but whoever it is surely vying for greater power, and may we add, they've been doing it for a very long time. After Malebolgia transforms the Violator into the clown, the latter asks him how long he has to be in that particular guise. Malebolgia is determined about this decision and won't change his mind until the Violator regains his trust. So, after Malebolgia orders the Violator to leave from there, he asks the Viscerator to step from the shadows. It becomes clear that the one encouraging Malebolgia about his decisions earlier, and also stating to him that the Violator was never fit for the task at hand, is none other than the Violator's own sister. With Malebolgia finding the Viscerator's willingness to betray her brother admirable, she blatantly asks Malebolgia if she can take her brother's place. Malebolgia doesn't hesitate and lets the Viscerator take the Violator's place on Earth. It's appropriate to say that the Viscerator, for a very brief period, did become the greatest enemy of medieval spawn, challenging him at every turn. And we dare not disregard the wake of death and destruction that she left behind in her path. Naturally, this had medieval spawn magically bounding the Viscerator, imprisoning her in the shadowy caves beneath a collapsed cathedral and leaving her to die, while also making sure that she couldn't escape on her own. But this was half a millennium ago, and, cut to the present, the Viscerator is back to enact her vengeance. Despite she-spawn and medieval spawn's incredible strength, they can barely match up to the Viscerator. But an unexpected blow from Redeemer does surprise the Viscerator. As per her, Hellspawn certainly didn't work with angels, and with her addressing Redeemer as an anti-spawn, Redeemer blasts her out of his way, making it clear to the Viscerator that he is a Redeemer. We see the Viscerator lying in what seems to be a pool of green blood, and it's literally impossible for her to recuperate given the amount of lethal damage she has. She-Spawn asks Medieval Spawn if the demon is dead. Medieval Spawn tells her that he wouldn't want to make the same mistake twice, and the Viscerator, to their horror, is resurrecting her to her former glory. Medieval Spawn tells the rest that they have to finish the Viscerator because not only is she far more dangerous than her brothers, but she also possesses the ability to have children. Okay, truth be told, they cannot exactly be categorized as her children, they're more like the creepy-crawly offspring of the Viscerator. In short, the Viscerator can transform her victims into insectile aberrations, whom she refers to as her children. The following comic panel shows all the bullies that the Scorched had previously engaged in the bar fight turned into the monstrous minions of the Viscerator. The Viscerator's plan is quite simple. She's here to enact her revenge with the sole aim of pleasing her master by presenting all of their heads at Malebolgia's feet. But what she's oblivious to is the fact that Malebolgia has long been dead, slaughtered by Spawn during her time of imprisonment. So one can imagine the shock she gets upon learning this fact, so much so that she goes into denial and even calls Medieval Spawn a liar. The Viscerator further states that the whole thing is nothing but a trick and that symbiotes cannot kill their creator. The Viscerator, unwilling to believe a single word of what she's just heard, nonetheless decides to leave from there and see things for herself. Of course, her fight with the Scorched isn't over, which she makes clear to all of them before leaving. Elsewhere, the man known as Bishop, whom we had been introduced to in issue 24, is seen hiding away in a place that used to be a house of God. He's seen kneeling down and folding his hands like he's praying. Surrounding him is a pile of dead bodies, but Bishop seems unbothered by that. Soon, the Viscerator appears, calls him a deceiver, and asks him if it's true that Malebolgia is dead. Bishop agrees, and his eyes begin to glow. He tells the Viscerator that Malebolgia's death has only allowed them to create their own destinies, and further tells her to join him, as together they can find the revenge that the Viscerator craves and simultaneously carve out their own power base. The final comic panel gives the audience a vertical view of a standing Bishop, who is seen telling the viewer that when the time is right, he will also exact his own revenge, and that Jessica Priest is unworthy of being the She-Spawn. A foreboding shadow behind Bishop states that he might as well be Omega Spawn, but that's just us guessing for now. Marvelous verdict! With this, we've finally come to the end of our video. What do you think about the Viscerator? Do you wish to see more of this character? We know what we want, a family reunion for sure. Not only will that be super exciting, it'll also probably be one of the bloodiest affairs to take place in the Spawn universe. Anyway, we would love to know your thoughts in the comments section down below. If you want to see more on the Viscerator, the Violator, or any more obscure Spawn characters, let us know down in the comments section down below and we'll consider them for future videos. That's all we have for you today, but until next time, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.